Yasuo is based on a real person. Specifically, Yasuo is based on Miyamoto Musashi, as much the real Miyamoto Musashi as the one depicted in Vagabond. But who was Miyamoto Musashi? Well, let's start with the visuals first, okay? Here you have Miyamoto's depiction in Vagabond, and here you have Yasuo. I think the inspiration is clear. I think no further words necessary. But the real Miyamoto Musashi was Japan's greatest swordsman ever. He was undefeated through 61 duels. He survived several wars even when he was on the losing side. He wrote books on war strategy that are still considered to be meaningful today. He composed poetry. He drew great paintings. He was a master of the arts that's still considered relevant today. So you have a masterful swordsman, masterful strategist, and an artist and philosopher. Yeah, that real Miyamoto Musashi sounds like more fiction than Yasuo, but he was real, and he would famously, throughout his 61 duels all over Japan, often use a wooden sword, a bokken. Why? Because it's lighter than a metal sword, and thus it's quicker. And in a duel, if you strike someone with a wooden sword and tremendous strength on the skull, they're just as out of it as they would be with a metal sword. And Miyamoto Musashi was known to have that incredible, monstrous strength. At age 13, he won his first duel against a grown swordsman, and in that first duel, he used the wooden quarterstaff against an experienced swordsman using a metal sword, but he crushed his skull with that wooden quarterstaff at age 13. So at a young age, Miyamoto Musashi already drew blood, and from then he would go on to win 60 more duels and stay undefeated, sometimes using his bokken, sometimes using a metal sword, and sometimes using two swords. And actually, his school of swordsmanship became known as the art of using two swords in battle. His school of swordsmanship was called the Niten Ichi Ryu. 61 duels, not a single loss, and then he retired to kind of roam the mountains, live in the mountains, and devote himself to the art and the philosophy and calligraphy. And if that sounds familiar, yeah, Yasuo, after his master dies, kind of roams the mountainside and lives the hermit life. So you see, that inspiration kind of comes from Miyamoto Musashi. And another way Miyamoto Musashi inspired Yasuo is in the fact that the official biography describes Yasuo's existence as being called an error, a mistake that can never be undone. That's the burden he carries. And Miyamoto Musashi, at birth, his mother died giving birth to him. So some evil tongues would say he killed his mother at birth, and his father definitely thought so because he hated his son, he abused his son, and at age 7, Miyamoto Musashi's father cast him out the house. Now, of course, you could say that a lot of these things are just stereotypes of the wandering samurai without a master, the Ronin. And you wouldn't be wrong. Ronin are often depicted as carrying a heavy guilt, like Miyamoto Musashi might be carrying the guilt of his dead mother, and like Yasuo definitely carries the guilt of his dead master, and Ronin are often depicted as roaming the mountainside, living the hermit lifestyle, devoted to the sword. Yeah, these are Ronin stereotypes. It's just that Miyamoto Musashi's life is well documented, and as Japan's greatest swordsman, you could consider him the father of these Ronin stereotypes. Interestingly, Yone also seems to draw inspiration from Miyamoto Musashi, but also from his greatest rival, Sasaki Kojiro, because Yone uses two swords, and as I told you earlier, Miyamoto Musashi's school taught the ways of two swords, but also Yone uses a much longer sword, a so-called nodachi, which is what Sasaki Kojiro was known to use. Sasaki Kojiro was Miyamoto Musashi's greatest rival, but still fell against Miyamoto Musashi in their duel. But I just thought it's nice that Yasuo and Yone are inspired by the great Miyamoto Musashi and the great Sasaki Kojiro, who you might know from Records of Ragnarok. He's also considered a legend in Japan. So these two great swordsmen had a big influence on our favorite sword-wielding LoL champions. And if you want to see more of this stuff, then please do consider hitting that follow, because I do these mythological and historical backgrounds for anime, manga, and also gaming every day. And if you follow, then I'll see you tomorrow. Alright? Cool.